I've had to do a narration over the top of this video because of the poor sound quality. So here we go. So we're down here at Anzac Cove. This is where the Australians landed on the 25th of April 1915 at 4 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, it's a little bit different because there's a road there now, but the basic hill line, the coast, everything there is the same. It's the same water. So yeah, it's quite a surreal place. Very windy on the other side of the point on the Gallipoli Peninsula that morning, but a little bit of a breeze there. But it was an offshore breeze, so it was actually quite calm. So what happened was they were going to row in. They had to row in lifeboats, 150 men, from several kilometres out. Well, that's pretty tiring. So some British steamers towed them within about 300 metres, and at 4 in the morning they rowed the last 300 metres and then proceeded to row in themselves and got in about 4 in the morning. So this is a speech that was given by the President back in 1934 by Ataturk. So what it says is, those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now lying on the soil of friendly country. Therefore, rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Meemats. To us, where they lie side by side here in the country of ours. You and others. You the mothers who sent their sons from the faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now laying in our bosom and are in peace. After having lost their lives on this land, they have become our sons as well. So yeah, pretty moving speech he gave in 1934 when they started to do some work on that. So the Anzacs then moved up to that ridge, but we're just going to go down here and actually have a look at the exact spot they landed. The first lot were a Queensland regiment. They were the very first to land in Gallipoli, and they landed here at Anzac Cove. They were the Queenslanders. They landed first, and they lost about 70 men just getting off the beach, from what I can understand from what the fellow was saying. So this is a cemetery that marks this spot. It's quite a surreal place, especially for Australians. This is where these guys were. Also, just on that, one of the youngest there was 14-year-old. A lot of them was 16, 17, and obviously 19, 20. But a lot lied about their age. But the youngest Australian was 14-year-old who lost his life up on Lone Pine. So yeah, I just did a bit of a walk down here. It's a beautiful spot, and the Turkish people, they keep this looking terrific. You couldn't ask for any more. What they do is just, and have a look at this, it's like a Queensland waterfront, isn't it? Blue waters, calm waters, down onto the sandy beach. Just magic, just magic. So I don't know what else to say here. It's more moving than anything, I guess. Yeah, so I bought a little stone with me from Australia, um, and just to put a little engraving on it, and I sat that stone right there. Whether it stays there or not, I don't know. Um, I did it purely out of respect for Australians, and I did it for my dad, who was a veteran, passed away this year. Because when I told him I was going to Anzac Cove, and that, he was just over the moon, being a Korean War veteran himself. Yeah, so it's quite surreal. So for our family that's left, from my sister Gail, my wife Rose, my two kids, Tyson and Taylor, and a little Levi, that's respect from our family to those that let their sons go to war. So where we are here is at North Beach, which more Australians landed there, I think from New South Wales and this is where they actually hold the the Anzac Day celebration ceremony. Remember, is held there. This is a statue of a Turkish officer who ran out into no man's land when he saw a wounded Australian officer, picked him up, run over to the Australian trench, dropped him in the Australian trench, and then ran back. Here we are at Lone Pine. That there's the only pine tree that is originally third generation from Lone Pine. It's a third. Some seeds were sent home by the diggers. Their families grew them, and then that's a seed from a third generation. That's not it. It's that one. It's that one right there. That big round one is the original pine from there. So this is Lone Pine, classed as the bloodiest battle ground in Gallipoli. The Turks refer to it as Blood Ridge because of the amount of blood that was spilt there. So up where the memorial is there, that was the Turkish lines, trenches, and down the end there, where that row of trees are, was Australians. The Australians charged from there. They charged down all the way under fire to the trenches, which were just there where the monument is, and took this ridge. Later on, it was taken back. Now they took that on the third day, something like that, and they battled for that bit of ground backwards and forwards to the 10th of August, from April to August. That's all. Like one would gain, one would get, and the Turks would get that back. The Australians would push them back off. Turks would get it back. So it was called Blood Ridge by the Turks, and it's the site of the bloodiest battles of the Anzac of the Gallipoli campaign, I should say, not just the Anzac, the Gallipoli campaign, and the Australians are in it. And it was a diversionary battle to allow the British to land further up, and it worked because the Turks had to, even though there's a meagre force of Australians, the Turks had to put a lot of resources there to keep pushing the Australians back, so they didn't get any further and get up onto Chunic Bear and take the high ground, which is what they call the Sphinx, where the big thing was. On this thing, there's a W. Blair. Whether he's some relation of mine and our families from my mum's side, I don't know. I did hear, speaking to my sister, I did hear that we had a relation of Blair on that side in World War One. I'm not too sure if that's him or not. I'd have to, I'd have to sort of research it and find out, which I may well do. It could be worth, a W. Blair could be worth doing. So this is really the revered place for Australians, where they stood. This is where the 14-year-old fellow, he lost his life here. This is where they cheek to jowl with the Turks for 9 months and just battled. Okay, this is the actual front line as far as the Australians got. They're the Australian trenches right there, you can see. these trenches are still there today. Obviously they've filled in a little bit that, but that's the Australian trench line there, running sort of away from the camera, almost parallel with that road. The Turkish trench line isn't far away at all. And take into account, back then there was no trees. The Turkish trench line is just where that lady in blue is now. That's the Turkish trenches there, you can see in front. Where she's standing there and to the left, and you can see where that gentleman there is, that's the Turkish trench there. You can see it quite clearly running along there. That's how close they were. They were that close. Only once in the whole campaign do they call a truce for, I think, 9 hours, where each came out and got their dead and wounded from the battleground and took them back. That's only ever happened once. They only ever called a truce once. But when they got to this point, the Australian commander could see that there's just no chance. So it was just a losing battle. But they dug in, as good Aussies do, and with the New Zealanders on a different section who were making good progress. It was a tough campaign. Quite interesting here that you're allowed to walk through there, but I suppose the feeling you get walking through is quite surreal, I must admit. To think that the men that fought and lost their lives there. A thing they did do, because it was peacetime, there's times when just nothing was happening. So the Australians would dig a tunnel underneath the Turkish lines, and the Turkish did too, and then they'd set charges off and blow them up from underneath. Here's one of those tunnels that's sort of collapsed. You can't see. Obviously, a lot of it's grown over, and it's been over 100 years. But it is quite interesting that both sides tried it, because there's times when there was no fighting. Disease, some of the insects, in winter it was freezing, it snows there, it's 35, 40 degrees in summer. So you think disease and that sort of thing, and sickness, they're eating tin food and all that, played a big part in that as well. So in people dying or getting moved out. Right, so yeah, that's the actual front line. And then the Turks just kept reinforcing. The Turks were there 4 or 5 months before the Anzacs landed, because they had an inkling it was going to happen. So they knew that all this ground backwards, they'd trained on here, they'd worked here, they dug in here. So they knew this ground really well. Where we go to after this here is called the Neck. This is it here, which was a pretty bloody battle area. The Turks were there behind those trees, and the Australians were dug in there. They were shelling the Turks at 4:30 in the morning. That was to cease, and the Australians were to charge. The shelling stopped 10 minutes early. The Australians didn't charge, and when they did 10 minutes later, guns were set up, everything, and they were mowed down, 150 men. They sent another wave in straight away, they were mowed down. So they sent 4 waves in, and the whole lot were mowed down. This is in the scene in Gallipoli where Mel Gibson has to run back and pass the message, but the commander kept saying no, keep going. So that's a pretty sad spot. This is Chunuk Bair. This is where the New Zealanders came up this hill here. This is the highest point on the Gallipoli Peninsula, and they took Chunuk Bair. The Turks responded from on the left-hand side there, surrounded 3 parts of them, and drove the New Zealanders out. What didn't help the New Zealanders, their shelling fell short as they approached the top of the ridge, and a lot were killed in friendly fire. So the New Zealanders, their monument is there, and it's on that. There's looking down there to the left over the Dardanelles. You can see why that was such a prized spot. It's the highest point. So that memorial is also there. There is a memorial also there for the Turkish people. So you can see how high this is. You can see over that side of the peninsula, and that's a New Zealand monument there, and that's Turkish monument beside it. Quite impressive. The highest point that the New Zealand, the Kiwis got there, but the Turks were ready. They were ready, and they were lots of numbers. Chunic Bear was the prized possession, but unfortunately couldn't be held. And I think it was after this battle around the 10th of August that it was sort of getting decisions time. We've got to get out of here. We've got to withdraw. The withdrawal was done, and it was done without any casualties. It was done swiftly, quickly, efficiently. A lot of it at night, and the Turks knew they'd sort of won that, and I think they let them go anyway. So the Australians and New Zealanders, geez, they wore the brunt of this. When you hear the all the information that you're given, consequently, when the Australians landed and drove inland and realised what they were up against, the Australian commander said, "Look, we've got to withdraw because we're just going to win this." But the British commander kept saying, "No, dig in, dig, and dig yourselves in." And guess where the name Digger come from? That's where that came from. The World War One vets, they dug in, and by geez, they spent 9 months in there in hell, in absolute hell. Snow, rain, heat. It all happens up on this place. So it's there's the Dardanelles and the Straits there you can see. So it was a prize spot there. These are some trenches at Chunic Bear. They've just sort of been, sort of furbished, remodeled a bit, just to restored, just to give you an idea of how bad it is. The rest of this video is just photos of me and around this area. If you're interested, keep looking, go through them. I'd just like to thank you for watching this. Whoever watched it, please like it, because as an Australian, it's important that this gets out to as many people. And any Australian who gets the opportunity to go to Anzac Cove, please do. It's put a lump in my throat and a tear in my eye, I can tell you now. It is a surreal place. Please go there as an Aussie if you can get the chance. Thanks for watching this. Cheers.